This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. One of the interesting subjects which might be good to talk about, to continue in a way the last talk we had, is something which we talk a lot about in modern life, but not so often in Buddhism, even though it's all through Buddhism. And it's the fight or flight response, which is really fascinating when you look at it, because from an evolutionary psychology point of view, they say the fight or flight response is basically our ancestors long ago walking through the bush or the forest, heard a rustle in the leaves, and all of a sudden, like instant, a response kicks in. Is it a tiger? Is it a wolf? Is it a predator? Or is it just something harmless? And we instigate a fight or flight response. And it happens so quickly that we'll either stand up, with a big stick if we've got, or run for our lives. Now, what's very interesting about this is while that's normally an extreme version, and we usually treat the fight or flight response as an extreme version, this massive rush of energy, of adrenaline and blood rushing through your body to run for your life. And yet, there's a milder form of it. And it's a milder form that most of us aren't really aware of. For example, we have a fight or flight response with the present moment. Some people even have a fight or flight response with life itself. And that can be really challenging for people, because when we start to look deeper into life, as well as through our meditation, through mindfulness and everything else, we start to see what is the relationship we have with the present moment. Because a lot of the time, we have, without even knowing it, a fight or flight response happening to the present moment. We're either tensing up, stressing out, or trying to get rid of thoughts and feelings and sensations that we find uncomfortable and unpleasant and distressing. And at the same time, we might try to fight and control and shape the mind to be, and the body to be how we want it to be, to force the mind to obey our will, so to speak. And this is a thing that pervades all our lives. It's a mild version of the fight or flight response, which we almost never talk about. And to an extent, it's not really discussed in a Buddhist context, but when we look at it, the fight or flight response as a term, as a modern term, they didn't really have such an idea in early Buddhism, but they did. And this is a thing, they talk about it all the time. Even the Buddha's story, when we look at it, he left home, flying away from the troubles. Then he became an ascetic to fight his mind and body, to make it submit to his will, to find liberation or salvation or some freedom through forcing the mind and the body. And yet he realized that doesn't work. So the fight or flight response is a big thing to look at in meditation and a big thing to look at in our lives. Because even though from an evolutionary point of view, yes, it's a very, very important thing. There could be a predator in the bush instead of just a bird or a mouse or something. But in daily life, do we really need it? Are we reacting or responding a little too strongly to stimulus that perhaps isn't as dangerous as we think it is? But we're just following these old habit patterns, and that's controlling our lives. And so the benefit of calming that down becomes really, really important, becomes really, really useful, and becomes really, really enjoyable. Because all of a sudden we can be calmer in everyday situations. We can be aware of what's going on, that we might have a difficult relationship with our co-workers, with our family. A lot of people have panic attacks, about the next family dinner, and all kinds of things. And this is the same kind of thing. The fight or flight response kicks in and there's a kind of panic system happening. And yet we can calm that down. We can be more present with the moment and not be afraid of it. But in able to do that, we have to be interested in the present moment. And this is one of the big things that we talk about. We touched on it with chronic pain in the last talk, but we really didn't have much time to talk about it. Because with chronic pain, the fight or flight response is going almost constantly. And that's what makes it so difficult to meditate with constant pain and chronic pain and other conditions, is that the mind is going crazy trying to deal with this strong impulse, this strong pain feeling, whether a mental pain or a physical pain, and it's not able to resolve the problem. And it keeps going, keeps constantly trying to find a problem up until it flies away into alcohol or drugs or some kind of escape mechanism, or it tries to fight itself, and you can develop all kinds of really miserable health conditions from fighting yourself. It's a horrible way to live. But it's so difficult to calm that response down. And that's why giving yourself time and space to be able to do that is really important. And at the same time, developing these, we could call them supplementary systems, but realistically, from a Buddhist point of view, they all fit together. These systems such as the loving kindness and compassion, calming this down. It's okay. And the more we calm it down, the less the mind needs to be afraid. Because the thing is that deep down the mind looks at the world, and particularly when it's already had a lot of challenges in life, whether you've had a difficult upbringing or you've got other challenges, health challenges, economic challenges, all kinds of things going on. The mind looks at the world and says, whoa, we can't deal with this. And it looks at it from an outside perspective. And then it looks inwards and says, whoa, we really don't know how to deal with this. And it panics even more. And what it does is it very often can build up a fortress. And in that fortress, we kind of feel safe, like, okay, the world's out there, I can feel a little bit more protected inside. And just that little bit of sense of protection makes us feel more confident and more able. And that's a good thing. The problem is that fortress can become a prison. We can spend our entire lives trapped in our fortress. And whenever we see the slightest threat on the horizon, we bring out the cannons and the boiling oil. So our response can be very, very difficult in that situation. And yet, at the same time, a lot of people might not be building a fortress. They might be building a castle in the sky, somewhere else to escape to. Or they might be longing for a little home of their own, some sweet little dream. And this all sounds all very kind of nice and sort of pop psychology and everything else. But when we remember, what was the first thing the Buddha said under the Bodhi tree after his enlightenment? House builder, you have been seen. You will not build your house again. And that's a very, very interesting thing. We don't often talk about that. And yet it's the first thing he said under the Bodhi tree after this enlightenment. That this whole system, trying to build up this house, this self, this protection system, you don't need to do that anymore. And that's incredibly liberating. The challenge, of course, is seeing how deep this goes. One of the most common thought experiments that I use for this is to imagine yourself in a comfortable room, a beautiful room, just as you like it, the decor, the light, the temperature, everything as you like. And imagine the most comfortable chair or bed, and imagine yourself sitting in that bed, relaxing, fully comfortable. How long is it before you start moving? How long is it before you need to adjust your posture and, before it becomes uncomfortable? It's not very long, is it? And this is the thing, we find this every day in meditation. We find this every day in life. A lot of the time we're constantly readjusting ourselves when we don't even notice it. And yet here's the thing. We often try to come into our meditation posture expecting it to be all perfect, and this fight or flight response kicks in because it's not comfortable. And all of a sudden we're trying to try to make it and sit through the pain and everything else. And we become more stressed and more miserable, and eventually we think meditation sucks and I'd much rather be on the internet. Much rather be watching TV. Much rather be doing all these other things. When realistically, it's how our response to it is important. And yet here's an interesting thing. This is the other side of this thought experiment. Imagine the evil version of Venerable Sampa. It's a big samsara, there must be an evil clone of me out there somewhere. And he comes along and injects you with something so you can't move. You feel everything, but you can't move. And basically, my evil clone is inducing the locked-in response. And that's where it gets really interesting from a Buddhist point of view. Because you describe that to most people, and they're going, that's my idea of hell. That's the last thing I want. Most people are terrified of that situation. I've met many elderly people who tell me that if ever they're in that situation, to turn off the life support. They'd rather die than be in that situation. And yet, that's the first noble truth right there. This is what life is. And in response to just how life is, we have a fight or flight response going. We're constantly trying to get away from ourselves, get away from the present moment, get away from the stress, the suffering, the pain, whatever you want to call it. Or we try and fight it. And we now know that this fighting creates all kinds of inflammation and stress and all kinds of problems in the body. And it's this big cascade effect of the mind and body interacting with each other, and it becomes so complicated. Eventually the system says, it breaks down. And it says, I can't do this. And very often that person may have a stroke or a heart attack, or they might feel that tomorrow's only going to be more of this, and, jumping off a bridge is preferable to this. And this is the thing, we can change our situation. And it's very, very interesting at the same time. I'm sure many of us in this group have, whenever you try to explain meditation to other people, and that it's just sitting still and being present with your mind and body in the present moment, some people might sort of say, what would you want to do that for? Or they might sort of say, no, can't do that. I'm not going there. And that's interesting as well. It shows that they do know what's going on. And that's where it gets more and more interesting, because life is showing itself to us all the time. Reality is showing itself to us, pardon me, all the time. We're just not ready to see it yet. We're not strong enough to see it yet. So the first noble truth is right there. It's an objective reality the Buddha is talking about, not a subjective one. And we can relate to that from this thought experiment, or just the experience of a locked-in experience. So many of us have experienced it in different ways. I remember explaining this to a fellow monk, and he was going, yes, 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 yes. And I'm going, have you experienced this? And he had actually been in a coma himself. He had been in a major accident and had been through this, and that had actually been a catalyst for him to become a monk, because he realized what the situation is in life, and that the way we interact with life can be so horrific because we don't know better. Our fight or flight response is just kicking in all the time, and it's going crazy because we don't know how to deal with this. It looks inside and it doesn't see any skillful ways. It doesn't see how we can manage this. And it doesn't see any kindness in ourselves. And it doesn't see any stability or maturity in ourselves, which comes from keeping the precepts and things like that. There's no happiness there. And if there's no happiness, what is the mind going to do? What is the body going to do? It's just going to continue trying to escape. And so the beauty is we can change this. And we're very, very fortunate to be able to change this. And so there's all these different practices we can use to calm the situation down, to develop that better relationship with ourselves, to empower ourselves, so to speak. And this is a strange thing. When we talk about empowering ourselves, a lot of people think that to empower ourselves is to empower the ego, to be a bigger, stronger, tougher person who can fight all this. No, actually, it's the other way around. To empower yourself is to go, yeah, it's okay. Just let it go. Yeah, it's okay. It's not so bad. We can manage this. It's not so, there's far worse situations, And this is the thing. It was always there. And the more and more we do this, the more and more we sit on the cushion, the more and more we see this in daily life, the more and more we realize this kind of feedback mechanism. Oh, there is another way. We don't have to have this response all the time. We're retraining the mind, so to speak, to act differently. Those instincts are still going to be there, but we don't have to follow them. And gradually, it becomes more rational, you could say. The habit pattern has set in a positive way that the response we have is more positive than being more destructive. And that is very rewarding. We could spend our whole lives talking about this. But of course, doing it is the best bit. So, when we look at these things, we often have to sort of question, how are we living? In our daily lives, we are often so busy, so overburdened. And it's, in this day and age, stress is number one killer, really. It causes so many problems. But it's so difficult for us to find time and space. Even in the monastery, there's so much business, so much stuff happening. We have to sort of develop a time for monks, and certainly you can use it at home, where we sort of say, okay, well, this is the public side, this is where all the business happens, this is where all the work happens. Then we cross over and we walk into our bush, we disappear, and all that gets left behind. And it's just us in the present moment and nothing else. And there doesn't need to be anything else. So find yourself opportunities for space. You can find space even in the smallest areas. And that's kind of the illusion, is we think, we have to find some great awe-inspiring landscape or anything else, which for sure is very useful. But can you find that space in yourself? Because if you can find that space in yourself, it's there everywhere. The joy is there everywhere. And the more and more we keep the precepts, the more and more we keep daily life practice, the more joy there is. We enjoy sharing, we enjoy giving, we enjoy being present, we enjoy the quality things in life. And we're not afraid of the negative stuff that happens, because it's always going to be there. But we don't have to fight it. We don't have to fly away from it and try and escape. Because this is the thing. Like in the last discussion we had on pain, a lot of pain is just signals that the body's giving us that something is wrong. A lot of the mental pain we have is signals from the mind that something is wrong. And we can turn back using our mindfulness to be aware, okay, something's gone wrong. Let's look at what's gone wrong. Let's see what's there. And let's see what we can do about the situation. There's a huge amount of being proactive and inventive and innovative and creative and trying all sorts of things just to see how the mind responds to it. Because there's so much delight that can be gained in the present moment. But that delight is only there when we're not trying to fight it. And that, I think that is worth everything. You know, it's hard to put in more simple terms, but it's one of those difficulties that the vast majority of people, what we're trying to do is we're trying to use meditation and all kinds of things, religion generally, as a way to either change our circumstances. Basically, the fight or flight response isn't going away. We're trying to meditate to control the situation. And we're often attracted to these big figures that teach a meditation style where you force the body, you sit through the pain and so on, and you try and meditate doing these methods and techniques and everything else in the hope that, you know, I will go into my meditation cocoon and emerge as a Buddha butterfly. But of course that doesn't happen. Of course we can't change the bigger picture. We can't change the nature of reality. And that's really what the Four Noble Truths are about, is that we can't change this stuff. It's our response to it. The second Noble Truth is that this suffering that we experience is caused by that huge broad spectrum of wanting to the craving that drives us crazy. Our response is the fight or flight response, basically, which is a form of wanting. And when we calm that down, so much relief, so much happiness, so much joy in life, because we're giving ourselves the ability and the freedom to experience that. And why not? For goodness sakes, why not? You know, what else are we going to do with our lives? You know, none of us are getting any younger. Is it worth continuing on life doing the same old things when they're really not going to help us or anyone else? It does kind of get to that point where we need to be mature and admit it's not working. And that's really hard for most of us to do. It's really hard because we're taught from very young about the dream, about, you know, we watch movies and things like that about the happy ever after, and we think that, oh, this could be us, you know, like there's this lottery in life where, you know, we could find Prince Charming or some beautiful woman or whatever we're looking for and have great adventures and it'll all be wonderful, and then there'll be the happy ever after and it will all be great. But who's had that? We're attracted to it simply because nobody's ever had it. We're attracted to these stories in a way because they give us hope. They give us some kind of comfort. And that hope and comfort is attracted to us because we don't have hope and comfort in ourselves. We're looking for it outside, in stories, in things that we can never achieve. And so facing the dream is so hard because it's such a beautiful dream. And those writers in Disney and all the rest of it, they're pretty darn good. You know, they certainly know how to sell it. So it's challenging for us to face this and going, because we don't know what's beyond. Deep inside, we have this big fear of what's beyond. That's why we build up this fortress, because outside looks really, really horrible. And yet we can change our interaction with that. We can step outside the fortress. We can put our little tippy toes outside the door and go, oh, okay, it's not so bad. Maybe we can just put a little elbow out. Oh, it's not too bad either. We're not going to be attacked or, you know, scorched or anything else. And then eventually we step outside and it's like a meadow of flowers. There's a blue sky. There's space and light. And we're free there. Yeah, okay, when we get back, maybe we have to go back into the fortress when we interact with the rest of the world, when we go back to work on Monday and everything else. Such is life. But we don't need to be stuck in it. We don't need to be, dependent on it as if the world is going to collapse if the fortress collapses. Realistically, the world becomes so much more beautiful when it does. But we have to then become more responsible in our lives. We have to choose how we want to live, and we value these good things. We value the good things in other people. We value the good things in our relationships with the world and with everyone else. All of a sudden, small kindnesses can be the most beautiful, amazing thing, and yet we never notice them. These small little things, as I often tell people, this world is full of small joys, but we're looking for the big fish, and that's the problem. Not everybody gets the big fish, and when few people who pretend to have caught the big fish, they've got lots of money, they've got big houses, they've got fancy cars, they've got all this stuff, they're billionaires and whatever. Are they really happy people? It's not long to watch, to see that actually they're not. They're just controlling the world because of their response to themselves and to everything else. This deep fear, this fight or flight response we have with the world, this aggression we have to the world, leads us to do all kinds of horrible things. As we're seeing in the world today, all the conflicts and everything else. Where is this coming from? It's coming from inside, how we relate to the world, to our beliefs and everything else. And all these things that we have built up to make ourselves feel safe, to give ourselves an identity. We don't build hospitals for fun of it. We build them for a good reason. We don't build schools and economies and governments and everything else for the heck of it. We build them for good reasons. Because the world is not easy. Life is not easy. But when we become too dependent on them, when we become too afraid of it all falling apart, that's when the danger happens. Because then we turn into monsters. The fear has taken over. The fight or flight response has gone crazy. And, we just go and pick up the biggest stick we can and whack it. And whack anyone who gets in our way. And, then we have to live with what we do. The pain grows. The misery grows. And yet, we don't have to do this. There is freedom and happiness that comes from being in the present moment and changing our relationship to it. And looking for the joy and happiness and being open to these things. Giving ourselves space for that to be there. Which at the beginning is hard. It is difficult because we're not used to doing it. We're so used to thinking, I can get happiness through my coping mechanisms. I can get happiness through, to make the world just feel a little bit less painful, a little bit more happy by following my old habits. And they work to an extent, so I'm going to stick with those because I know they work. But softly, we start to see, we expand our options. And we start to see, actually, there's a better way. Hey, we can change this coping mechanism for this. We can improve in our insight. We can improve in our understanding. And we can improve in our intelligence. Wisdom and compassion. The heart and the head have to come together. And then we can approach life in a far, far better, more fulfilling way. So, I've been going on for half an hour. Shall we get into the good stuff, the meditation?
Very appropriate, Ajahn. So please, let's...
Okay, everybody, please stand up and give yourself a bit of a stretch and adjust your clothes if you need to. And do everything you need to do to adjust your seat and to get more comfortable. I've had you sitting for half an hour, you must be feeling a little tight. So it's good to give yourself a bit of an adjustment. Okay, and when we're ready to go, let's settle in and close your eyes. And the first thing we'll do is check, what is our feeling of this moment? How relaxed are we? How tight are we? Can we relax more? Can we become a little more comfortable? The first few minutes are the best minutes. And while you're looking, while you're relaxing, see what the response is. Does it feel better? Is there a sense of relief? A sense of happiness? Now we can be here. And to begin with, we'll use the breathing to relax more. We'll take some long, gentle, deep breaths to fill the body of air and to let it go. Is the body sending you any messages? Is it saying, oh, just adjust your legs or adjust your shoulders? Now's the time to do so. And observe how your breathing changes. Is it becoming more relaxed, more gentle? How is your breathing helping you? Isn't breathing just the most wonderful thing to do? Just breathing can be healing. What feelings arise as you breathe? Is there kindness? Is there joy? Is there well-being? Whatever emotion there is, allow it to grow. Whatever comfortable sensations you have, let them grow too. Allow each relaxing breath to be a gift to yourself. A beautiful gift. And now imagine walking into a beautiful garden, a beautiful space filled with flowers. And in this beautiful place is a place for you, a place to relax, a place to enjoy, a place to be fully present without having to fight or flight, without having to run away. Describe it to yourself. What is a beautiful garden? A beautiful garden of your heart, of your mind. Imagine a nice chair or bench that you can sit and enjoy this space. And imagine looking up to the sky, beautiful blue sky, and allow your mind to expand and fill the space. A mind of loving kindness as vast as the sky. And spread that loving kindness to fill the entire space, to fill your entire mind. And imagine walking towards a stream, gentle flowing water. And imagine reaching out and touching that water. And all the troubles, all the tension, all the sorrows flowing out into the water and flowing away. This garden is a space, is a gift for you. But imagine taking a flower and giving it to someone you love. And saying, thank you for being in my life. And I wish you all the happiness in the world. Let that giving, that wish for happiness for all beings, expand. Expand as vast as the sky. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Venerable, would you like to continue with your talk a little and then do questions and answers? What would you like?
We could always do questions.
Okay. We have one here from Nikki. Nikki, are you here?
I am I here?
Well,
Yes, you're here.
Hello. I
Welcome.
would, thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Venerable. Thank you. I really appreciate your talk. And it's interesting because there was something happened last night. As you were talking, I was thinking about, and actually in the meditation, let me find you. I can't find you. All right, there you are. The fight-flight response is something, as I know we all, I can only speak for myself, is something really familiar. Like it's in my stomach a lot. So it doesn't take much for me to be, as they call it, triggered, isn't it? There's a trigger point. So I'd say last night I was walking the dog. My dog is a whippet and she's cut her foot on glass, and she hasn't been able to walk for 3 weeks, and it comes from people smashing bottles. Tried my best. Anyway, she's been in the back of my car and I have to drive 20 minutes to a bit of grass where it's soft so she can walk. And as I was driving, a teenager, an adolescent, dropped this bottle. And I stopped. I feel really embarrassing. And I stopped the car, I got out and I got really confrontational. I was shouting and effing and blinding at this, and they wouldn't look at me, they kept walking off, and then they giggled and ran off. And I was stood there, and there was people looking out the window. I was so upset, and then I got in the car and I drove off, and what came to my mind, I was so angry. And then I got scared. I thought, what if they come back and do something? And then I thought of this, I was a teenager once, and I was a really naughty teenager, and I would get into a lot of trouble, and I used to do that. I used to give the big I am. Mm-hmm. And then I remembered, and I was actually quite scared. And I couldn't tell anybody that stuff at the time, so I came across this, and I acted out in many ways for a long time. So it softened me a little bit, and then I thought, is this building good karma for me? And then I thought, no, it's not a bit odd, but I settled, and I drove back to them. They were sat in this area, and they were ready for me. And I got out of the car and I said, I've never done this, never gone back. And I went, I'm sorry, I shouted at you and I kicked off, and I said, and they weren't having it. And then I said, look, my dog's cut her foot, and I explained why, and I said, and I'm just upset, and I'm sorry, and I shouldn't have done that. Please don't throw litter. I drove off, they just gave me a thumbs up, and I came back and they cleaned it up. Someone had cleaned this bottle up. I'm hoping it's them. I'm going to believe it's them. And I thought, I need to tell someone, and I need to tell a monastic, or I need to tell someone who's a Buddhist, because they would understand the importance of that. Mm-hmm. But I changed the pattern. I'm 52. I don't expect to, that sort of thing. Anyway, so I wanted to ask you, and I understand that, I understand it's not really helping, but I'm still really angry at people for dropping litter. Don't like that. But of course it doesn't help me getting out the car and ready to fight them. I suppose that's a human response, but I don't like the reaction they're having me. It's really powerful. I don't know what I'm asking you here. I suppose I'm asking you to go, what do I do with that? You've just told us, really, haven't you? In your talk.
Well, the beauty with this is actually, this is kind of the beginning stage where things start to change and we start to see how we respond. And at the beginning, a lot of people are concerned about how we respond. We go, I could have done something really bad. I don't like that part of me. And yet, as we develop more, we go, it's okay. These old habit patterns have been there for a very long time. We have to start somewhere. And this is a big sort of dose of self-respect to be able, to see that change is possible and that we can do this. And it's a very, very big thing to be able to have gone back and told a person, look, I'm sorry, this is what happened and everything else. Because that might have changed their life too. A lot of the times we don't realize the impact we have on the world. And sometimes we feel lonely because we don't understand how we can do good in the world and how we can interact with others. But these old habit patterns, that's okay. The important thing about karma is it's all about intention. What was your intention at that moment? Really, the intention was, okay, it happened, let's repair this. And that is very good for the mind. That's very good karma. And it's very, very good for the practice, because that starts to reassert a new habit pattern, a new sense of confidence, a new way of moving forward. That even though people are still going to do, stupid things, their response, the reason they're doing it is because they don't care. And they don't care because they don't have happiness in themselves. They don't have self-respect. It's what they're missing. And sometimes they're being the old big person and, all tough and look at me and everything else, because they're trying to convince themselves, that they are a big person and everything else. And it's all a facade. It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, is seeing these insights can change our life, and we can fill our lives with more confidence and more happiness in that way, that we're doing good things, we're making choices that are positive. And even if these old habits arise, that's okay. We can come back and change it. It's not set in stone. So it's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you.
Oh, Chris, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Venerable, and thank you, Nikki. Kimberly, would you like to unmute? And thank you, Venerable, for letting me know.
Hi, thank you, Bhante. That was awesome, Nikki. That was great. My question is about mantras, and I think I tend to use them a lot because I work on my to-do list when I'm meditating. I tend to be compulsive in that area, so I just didn't know if I'm using a mantra as a crutch or if it is helpful. Love your thoughts.
Yeah. A lot of cases we do use mantras and other things precisely in that way. We do find them a little bit comforting, so we find a bit of stability, and it centers us in a way. And in a sense, that's their benefit. If we use the mantra as a way to relax more and to let go of the outside world and to just be present with the words and eventually understand what the words mean, the meaning behind the words. They're not sort of just a thing we repeat for the heck of it. What is it pointing to? So mantras can be really useful in that regard. But yes, we can use them. Our mind can kind of kick in and sort of... It does so because it's still not confident in the path yet. And that's okay. The more we do this, the more we meditate and the more we experiment with different meditations, for one, would be a very helpful thing. Because then we can see, okay, well, mantras are great in some context, but we can try something else. And then all of a sudden, our dependency on using them as a crutch starts to disappear because we don't need a crutch anymore. And that's the whole thing, is to be able to let go of the crutch once and for all. But we do that by replacing it with beneficial things, skillful things, ways that we can become more confident, more able, more informed, more rational, more compassionate, more wise than everything else. And it's kind of a great big canvas, a great big sort of potential we have to fill it with beautiful things. And so that's okay, a mantra's fine. But what does it feel like for you? If you're using your meditation as sort of as a working period, that's fine too. But there's times to sort of say, okay, we've done that. Now this time we'll do something different. We'll try relaxation meditation, and then we can do another working session meditation another time. So you have more arrows to your bow, so to speak. Does that make sense? Ooh.
Well, it makes sense to me, and I think it also made sense to Kimberly as well, Venerable. Venerable, we have some comments here. Would you like me to read them?
Yes, please.
Great story, Nikki. Very brave of you. I admire your action. Positive points in the Kahama Bank. And we also have, I always enjoy your talks, Venerable. Merits to you for helping people like us. I've added the us in there. Thank you you very much, Venerable. And also, we have a question from Eddie. How do you practice to face emotions like fear?
Fear takes a lot of time to deal with. Firstly, fear is another form of the fight or flight response. They underpin each other. So they kind of go hand in hand. But a lot of the fears we have can be very, very deep. And sometimes they're things that happen to us when we're very young. You know, maybe our school teacher might have snapped at us and we end up developing a fear of school teachers. They can be very complex. And having sort of a perspective of looking at the adventure here is really useful. Is to look at the potential to understand where these fears come from. How are they built? How did they arise? How did all this come to be? It's not so much that this stuff happened. We develop kindness for the past. We be able to accept that it happened, but we don't need to dwell on it. And that's the difference. The whole thing about fear is often that there's unresolved things in the past that's affecting our present because we're afraid of the future. We're afraid of what could go wrong in the present because of what we've learned in the past. So our fear is very personal and very subjective. And that's really a huge part of the adventure of understanding our mind, understanding how it ticks, how it works, and all these things. That can be a life journey, but it's a journey worth taking. And it's so fulfilling because this has happened to me many times, but also to many other people. So many of these major parts of our personality happen from very small events in the past. And we look at it going, this has been controlling my life for years. I've been afraid of this thing for years. And it was nothing. It was the equivalent of the monster under the bed. It wasn't even real. And it's being able to see that. That's how we deal with fear. Is the moment we start doing this, all of a sudden fears become less frightening because we're afraid of the fears themselves as much as the things externally. We have this complication of the fears inside and outside. Remember, as I said before, we look at the world outside and it scares us already and we build up that fortress. And we look inside us and find it's even worse and we build up that fortress even more. And yet all of a sudden, we have courage. Because the potential's there. We understand we don't have to be ruled by these fears forever. We can let them go. We can replace them with happiness, with quality of life, with doing good with our lives, not wasting our time, not wasting our lives. And that's the beauty of it. So it's a very big question, how to deal with fear. It always comes back to what is the fear and how did it arise? And it's okay to be there. It's okay for the fear to be there. It's been built up for a reason. It's there to protect us. Something happened in the past or we're afraid of something in the future. It's an attempt to keep us safe. And that's okay. But we can be safe in and of ourselves without the fear. So I hope that helps. It's a very big subject, but the beginning is always worth it.
Very well, thank you. Sky, would you like to unmute and ask the question, please?
Thank you, Venerable. You're always such a joy. I look forward to when you speak with us. Just yesterday, when I was listening to something about the 8 worldly winds, praise and blame and all that, I was personally wondering why fight and flight was not in the 8 worldly winds, seeing as they make you fly, fly out of your control, out of our control. And I was wondering what is, I have a situation with a sister who's, I think she's dying, very slow and long and painful chronic and sad, as you can imagine, and we are difficult to get along. And he wants to fight, and I want to flight. And I'm getting down under the finish line here, and it occupies my mind 24 hours a day, almost like I'm inside of her. But I still want to run away, but I need to be there for her. I need not to flight. I need not to fight. I was wondering if there are any shortcuts or tricks to make the moment that wind comes to make you want to run away, to stay. I was wondering, it's really, really important that I don't run away anymore at this point, and that she doesn't fight. This is life or death, and it is the most painful, as everyone knows, to go through. So I feel it all the time, but what you said was, even in the present moment, we have fight or flight. You know, we fight or flight our meditation. Boy, that really hit home. That really rang a bell, almost as loud as your bell. But luckily I can still laugh and have a good sense of humor, so I think that's helpful. Sometimes I don't take any of this seriously, but it is very serious. This is serious.
Yeah.
So what's the immediate, when you don't want to run away, you have to stay. So what's a good thing? What's something? Something. I need something.
There's a number of things happening here. One thing is there's a difference between empathy and compassion. When we empathize, we put ourselves in their situation. But compassion is sometimes to be a little separate, to give space in between. And from that position of compassion, we can act without being drawn into it. Because our attachments, particularly when it's a family member, are so strong. It draws us right in. It's really hard. So sometimes it's important to be present, but also to see, okay, this empathy is drowning me, and I'm starting to rebel against it. So there's this difficulty between the relationship. And that can be very, very hard to deal with, because especially when somebody is passing away or getting close to it and is having major insecurities with their life, major perhaps doubts or fears or regrets, talking about these things is really, really helpful. To set a space where we can talk about the past, to talk about the present. And that's really helpful, because once the empathy softens into compassion, we can become more active, we can become more courageous, because all of a sudden it's not drawing us in, it's not suppressing us. Because a lot of this fight comes in that we really don't want to be oppressed ourselves. And this is one of these unfortunate sides of just love. Love, if it's handled wrong, it can oppress us. Because we become too attached, we become too involved. We can't step back so much. And that's where the tensions arise in relationships. And so in this particular instance, talking openly is a great way to start, but also to have that space. Because all of a sudden, if we feel oppressed in a relationship, we become afraid of that relationship, or we become aggressive towards that relationship. The fight or flight response kicks in, because the nature of the relationship itself is too involved. It's too overwhelming. And so to be able to find that space in ourselves can be very, very freeing, but also it allows us to be more beneficial in that situation. We can act in more beneficial ways to help others. and especially those we care about. So this is one of those interesting cases where beneficial, beautiful emotions can go a little bit too far if we don't know how to handle them. But being able to find that space in ourselves, that time in ourselves, all of a sudden we can be present. And sometimes it's worth questioning in ourselves, are we afraid of death ourselves? Are we afraid of losing the people we love, the people we know? Because we never really feel alone until the last one who remembers is gone. When we're the last one, then we feel really alone. And yet, we can build that good relationship with ourselves, that we're never alone. And we can be happy with life because we've lived a good life. And that we can share with others. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. The compassion, I understand.
Thank you to Sky.
Thank you, Venerable.
Eva, you've been waiting quite a while, and thank you for putting your question in the chat. If you'd like to just unmute yourself and ask your question, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Eva.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thanks. Thank you very much, Venerable, for your presentation and your talk. I really also like the other one that. And my question is related to both, I think, because there are some articles that are being published about meditation, where they claim that maybe some people have such deep trauma that it's not advisable for them to meditate because it can make things worse. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure if that is only because they do the wrong type of meditation or they meditate in a way that, as you explained, where they are getting too forceful or trying to do something very specific. But I think a couple of weeks ago, Ajahn Appiah also mentioned that there is some form of meditation that is not advisable for beginners, and he said that it's also dangerous. So I was just wondering, if there's some risk depending on how deep a trauma is, or if there's something that, might be not good in some cases.
Yes, very much so. The thing is that with trauma, we've built up a huge wall against it because we don't know how to handle it. It's there, it's overwhelming our lives. We haven't built up skills yet to be able to face it. And the problem basically is with a lot of meditation styles now is it's become, I don't want to say commercial, but it's become, there's so many meditation businesses out there where they're putting out this one-size-fits-all system that you basically just sit there and they're not going to tell you what to do with the emotions or anything else. They're not really helping people. And in that particular instance, it's always recommended to start softly, to give that feeling space. And for a lot of people at the beginning, if they're severely traumatized, and of course it's different for every person. A person might have emotional traumas, there might have been sexual abuse, there might have been emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, this whole list of different contexts. And so a one-size-fits-all system just does not work. And so it's all about, it's advisable. The ideal is to be with a good teacher who can give you the time to help you personally through this. We don't really have that many good teachers available for that. So generally we recommend a good therapist or a counsellor or something else who can help you to get through that process as well, and to have that as a supplementary way. To go into meditation without any kind of support system, without any kind of confidence or good qualities being built first, there's no foundation for it. And then all of a sudden when you just sit and close your eyes, the first thing that comes up is that trauma, because that's the thing the mind wants to deal with. It's churning away. I want this to go. I want this to be filled. Do something with this. And it becomes more and more present. And yet they're not taught or trained yet how to face the fight or flight response, which immediately kicks in, and then there's this horrible nightmare on the meditation cushion. And unfortunately, it just happens, yes, way too often. But it's just so difficult in this case, is that it's so hard for, there's not enough teachers. We still recommend seeing a counsellor or a therapist first, basically, then to dive into meditation, because we need to structure a process to be able to get the person to the point that they're strong enough in themselves and wise enough and skilled enough in themselves to finally face that trauma and let it go, to finally understand how it arises, and to see that, okay, it's all right that it's there. The past is, but we don't need to hold on to it anymore. And that can take years. And through meditation, yes, if the person is strong enough, and not all of them are, it entirely depends on how it's set up for them. So there's plenty of cases where I don't recommend meditation for people. For them, I recommend the long discussion. Talking with them, helping them through it, helping them getting to the point where they can talk about it. Some people aren't even up to that point yet. It's trapped inside them and they can't even speak about it. It is the unspeakable. And so it's getting the person to that point to start with. And so in that context, yes, I personally am concerned sort of seeing how quickly people are taking up meditation, mindfulness and all these things and basically appropriating it outside of its context. And, sometimes they're presenting themselves as experts without having had years and years of training for it, which is really unsettling. If you spent enough time with your mind and seeing just how these traumas can affect us, and not just big ones, even small ones, it can take a long time to build that confidence to be able to do that. So yes, in that sense, I personally recommend what I call the long conversation is getting that person to that point first, developing those good qualities, keeping precepts, good community relationships, doing things, quality things with your family, getting involved in things in a positive way so you feel more stronger and happy in yourself and for those people. That gives them that support to help them forward. And I think that's very important. So the Buddhist system, if it's followed correctly, incorporates all of that. But as it's being snipped and appropriated as it has been, there's no way someone with a severe trauma can just resolve this with a mindfulness app. I'm sorry to say, but sometimes we do have to be a bit mature and rational about this. So hope that helps.
Eva, thank you very much for asking this question, a most poignant question for everybody. Thank you, Eva. Venerable, I've got a point in the chat here I'd like to read to you. Pierre Angela and Ian's father, Chandra, their beloved father, a devoted, lifelong practicing Sri Lankan Buddhist, passed away 21 months ago today.
Oh.
They're both with us this evening, and may he also gain much merit from today's Dhamma discussion, is the comment that they have passed. Would you like to say anything to them both? They're both here.
Well, it's, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. It's always wonderful that people can come in this international context, which we've never been able to do before. This is one of the ironies. Before, when we used to do the Armadale Meditation Group in the hospital, it was, it was a nice group, but it was a small, limited group. It was just for locals. And now here we are, this big international group, and we're able to be here. And when people have passed, we can remember them in a positive way and bring the gift of our practice to them. And that can inspire us and help us even more. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Venerable.
Yes, thank you, Pia Angela, and also thank you, Gary. Thank you both. And thank you, Venerable. We have another couple of questions. Are you all right to continue, Venerable?
Yeah, of course. Questions. Love questions.
Certainly. Are there any meditation exercises that are especially good at turning off the fight or flight happening within one's body?
This question could be a tricky one, because it can potentially be a way to try and jump the gun a bit. Eventually the fight or flight response fades away when we no longer need it. When we have built that confidence and that happiness in ourselves, that calmness in ourselves, that we no longer need the fight or flight response. When we've built up enough mindfulness to see how it is triggered, when it is triggered, how it arises, and how it affects us afterwards. And we build up this great big assembly of knowledge where we can put together a picture and going, okay, this is how we can move forward. Meditation on its own might not give you that. And this can be a bit of a challenge for a lot of people, as they, unfortunately, many of us, we want fast results. Yeah, it's all right. Everybody wants fast results. But meditation's a slow journey. It's slow and steady on that one. So practices for calming down the fight or flight response definitely involve filling your life with good events, good action, good precepts, generosity, kindness, enjoying life, and making life enjoyable in yourself, with your family, in your environment, in your community, and bringing that into your meditation, bringing the goodness that you have done in your life into your meditation as a foundation. It's called Chaga Nusati, remembering the generosity and the giving we have done is fantastic. It's a fantastic practice because it lifts us up. Straight away it gives us more energy, it feels more confidence that we have done good. And all of a sudden, the present moment isn't so scary anymore. We're more able to be with the present moment. And that really is, from that, all else comes so easily, because it just becomes more clear, because we've settled these things right from the beginning. And so ideally we would settle the fight or flight response, or at least start to, before meditation. So we will look at how we sit. A lot of the time, stand up and give yourself a bit of a stretch and to settle your clothes. That's fantastic for reducing the fight or flight response, because we're settled. We've made ourselves more comfortable from the beginning. We're not sort of setting ourselves into strict posture and tight and, setting the foundation to be miserable from the beginning, I'm afraid. So often the prep work really pays. So hopefully that helps.
Right, thank you. Well, Venerable, that seems to be almost about it. Would you like to leave us with a blessing this evening?
Yes, no problem. Nati me saranang anyang buddho me saranang warang ete na satya waje na sotite hotu sabbada. Nati me saranang anyang dhammo me saranang warang ete na satya waje na sotite hotu sabbada. Nati me saranang anyang sangho me saranang warang ete na satya waje na sotite. Huh? One more? What happened? Huh?
It's okay, Venerable. Just somebody didn't realise they were on music.
Oh, it's all right. Well, may you all be happy, and thank you for having me. How about that?
And thank you for inviting us into your living room too this evening, Venerable.
Thanks, Venerable. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you,
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Marin. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you very much, Venerable.
all. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Gloria, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to read your beautifully written comment.
Oh,
That's
time is now.
just written for Emma.
Okay. Would you like me to read it? I think it's relevant to everybody, to be honest with you. Yes, I think it's very relevant, so I'll see if I can find it. Let's see. I think some psychologists and psychiatrists speak on the subject as well. This is Eva's previous question. For example, to Parabrush, meditation is completely opposite to the basic coping mechanism of trauma, which requires the awareness comes into the body, while a lot of the time trauma causes disassociation out of the body experiences. Therefore, meditation will cause the person to feel like the trauma worsens, but in essence, it's just the trauma which is stored in the body surfacing up during the meditation. From my experiences, having trauma will need to be very carefully and gently approached, and may need external assistance as well. Please take it with a heap of salt, this comment. And I think it's the most generous comment to have made. Thank you, Gloria.
No, it's a good comment actually. So it's a lot of, I think we try to present things in this wonderful system that is going to fix everything, but trauma is a very difficult thing. I'm not sure quite, when you look at it, when meditation is about being present and being engaged, it's not so much dissociative, but that can happen. People can teach a dissociated meditation where you basically detach from everything.
It's like because when you have trauma, like I have trauma in the past, and a lot of the time I feel like I'm dissociating from myself. Like for most of the time I will feel like I'm not connected to my body.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when I do meditation, the first thing is that because my coping mechanism is dissociating, I'm dissociating from myself. Mm-hmm. And then because mindfulness is like I come back to the present moment. And then I start to aware of my body, and then those traumas stored inside will come out. And like because at the beginning you will feel like you do not know what to do, because at the beginning you basically because you will fight with your internal system, because your internal system will tell you like, no, don't come to the present moment.
Right.
Because it's dangerous.
Right.
Yes, but if you need to very gently extending the time, as well as extending your comfort zone.
Yes.
If the moment you start to do it, then you feel like intense trauma has come up, then you just stop at that moment. But sometimes when, for me, it's like the first 2 years. Every time I meditate, I would just start crying. But when the time, I think it's the past few months, the past half year, it's suddenly because I pour those trauma out. I think it's like those traumas originally stored in my body comes out, mm-hmm. and then I suddenly feel like I am fine. I suddenly feel like I'm fine now, but before that it's always I kind of feel painful doing meditation, but once those stored trauma comes out, you start to feel I think maybe 5 or 10% still remaining in my system, but 90% to 95% is gone. Then I will start to feel like I'm connected. It's hard to say if you are not experienced, and it's like you are connected to your body, mm-hmm. and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then, even if you're triggered, your the time span that you need to spend to soothe yourself become much shorter. So I would say that meditation is for everyone. That's from my experience. But you need to have you need to have good teacher. You need to have gentle guidance,
and you need to generally have a support system. But I will say that meditation is for everyone. I actually want to. I now always want to get people to meditate. Anyway.
No, that's a fantastic comment. That's a fantastic thing to bring up, because that is how the system works. A thing we don't talk about very often is that this body wants to heal. This mind wants to heal. It wants to let this stuff go. It wants to release all this stuff. But the problem is we feel that we can't handle it. We feel that it's too frightening. We just don't want to go there. It's too painful. And we keep shutting it down, locking it down, putting it away. And this is the thing, is that the meditation over time helps us do that. The challenge, unfortunately, is that, this one-size-fits-all system that we're telling people just, basically sit down, close your eyes and do X, Y, Z and it will all fix itself. It doesn't really. But with the support systems, with a good teacher, taking the time, building the courage and seeing that it's okay. This is stuff that happens in the past, but it doesn't have to oppress us now. And we can let it go just a little bit and a bit more and a bit more. And suddenly we realize, oh, okay, we can breathe a bit more. And that brings us back to ourselves far more presently, because we're no longer trying to fly away from the pain. The fight or flight response reduces. And so for that, meditation, yes, is fantastic. It's well worth it. The problem we have is so many people in the world have so much trauma, and there's so few teachers that, we really need to help them with a support system and to teach meditation in a better way, I think, and to be more open and to be more confident, and to remember that this is a way that the body and the mind is trying to heal itself by letting it go. And so we give it the freedom to do that. We let the mind release it because that's what it wants to do. It brings this stuff up because it's saying, we want to get rid of this. Please do something about this. And we keep saying, no, go away, go away, go away. And eventually we change our response and say, okay, let's do this. Let's sit here together and let's do this and let it go. And that's worth it. So, wonderful.
Thank you, Gloria. Venerable, just one last one here. Hello, Jan. What is a jhanic circle and jhanic dot? It happened at the end. Thank you. This is from Hui Ling Hui.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Jhanic circle?
Yes, that's spelled Jhanic.
Yeah, never heard of it. Jhanic circle and jhanic dot.
Yes.
We're going to need more context on that one, I'm afraid. I've never heard of it.
They're talking about jhana.
Jhana, okay, yep.
Oh, thank you, Martha. You rescued us.
Just jhana on itself?
Jhana, well, in that case, jhana circle or jhana dot.
Well, jhana is a really, really interesting thing, because what happens is you've become so peaceful in yourself, you've been able to let everything in the background go because it's become normal. So you'll become completely used to the present moment, and it's so peaceful and so beautiful that everything closes and disappears. And what's left is that the body you've let go of the body, and that's released a lot of energy to the mind, a lot of uplift, and the mind has been freed from what are called the 5 hindrances, which is greed, it's hatred, it's restlessness, anxiety, it's fatigue and dullness and doubt, that's the 5th one. And it's letting go of those. So the mind is now really bright, really collected, really beautiful. And unfortunately they're not very common. It's not very common that people experience these. Most people, in my observation, have fluked them, and it's changed their life. So Ajahn Brahm is really sort of has been on years for this, that you can't enter jhana intentionally, so to speak. He often says that Ajahn Brahm can't enter jhana. Ajahn Brahm has to disappear for jhana to happen. And there's a lot to be said about that. So the general approach is, in Buddhist circles in this time, it really started in Burma about 100 years ago, is that there's this massive split between samatha and vipassana. Basically, they tried to say that, just doing the vipassana exercise is all you need to do, and just don't worry about that samatha jhana stuff, it's completely irrelevant. The problem is, from the early Buddhist texts, it's very clear that samatha and vipassana have to come together. Samatha means to calm the mind, to clear the mind, its stillness, and vipassana means to see clearly, so they're correlated. So the more you calm the mind, the clearer you can see, because these hindrances have disappeared, these vested interests have disappeared, the fight or flight response has disappeared, because you no longer need it. And the mind is able to not only see things clearly, but it's strong enough to do that. It's strong enough to look at stuff which is very, very frightening. Remember, we build up this great big fortress to keep this stuff out, all these firewalls that we build up to keep this stuff out. All of a sudden we can be completely present with it and see it for what it is. And then we can let it go, because we realize that, firstly, we are not separate from it. Everything is relative. There's only one universe. There's no separation between me and everything else, between us and everything else. It's this idea of me, mine, I, is this fortress, this house that we have built to make ourselves feel safe, independent, in control, to be able to cope. And it's a coping mechanism, and it does its job. But it can be a bit on the poisonous side. It can become a bit overwhelming. It can be a bit dangerous, because ignorance has come in and we basically let it run wild. And then all of a sudden our ego is offended and it wants to wage war. So this is a challenge on that one. With jhana itself, jhana is very, very effective, but it's not very common. So in this particular one, working towards jhana is worth it, is completely worth it, because even just slightly calming the mind down is going to help you see clearly a little bit. Well worth it. But the approach that's very common in Buddhism, more in the Vipassana tradition, is all this is unnecessary, and it kind of doesn't really work. So jhana is it's important. That's an interesting response. I think that worked. So if you're really dedicated to that, go for it. If you're a very good meditator, go for it. If you're still very, very busy, if you're not ready for it yet, don't worry, but keep going. One day you get closer. One day it becomes more calm, you're more confident in yourself. The support systems have become more developed in yourself. The happiness builds. You're not afraid of the present moment. And the bliss is there. It arises all by itself. Because that's the thing. I mean, it's a whole infamous, remember sticking the plate to the wall incident. A lot of people still talk about that. If you want your mind to stay to the present moment, you need the joy to be there. That's what keeps it together. And that joy comes from the letting go. And it's a reinforcement mechanism. The more and more you let go, the more blissful it gets, the more peaceful it gets. And deeper and deeper and deeper it goes. Because all of a sudden, you don't feel afraid. You don't need to feel that you need to run away from the bliss, from the happiness, from the vastness of the mind. Because these are very vast open states. They're not restricted states. So jhana is a huge conversation, but Ajahn Brahma's been talking about it for years, so I'll just end up repeating stuff.